She only told her story, but that story cost her life. A young woman who just wanted to speak her truth was murdered under the shadow of her own marriage. The question is, in today's world, does telling the truth mean signing your own death sentence? You're watching Crime Chronicles Confidential, where we uncover the truths behind crimes that governments would rather hide. This isn't just a story of murder. It's the silenced scream of a daughter, buried forever under the weight of so-called honor. The world met her through 15-second clips. Sania Khan, radiant, confident, full of life. She danced to trending songs, shared uplifting quotes, and smiled through every frame. Her TikTok feed was a gallery of strength and beauty, a South Asian woman reclaiming her voice in a space where voices like hers were often silenced. Thousands followed her. Her captions spoke of healing, growth, and resilience. Her videos sparkled with joy, but it was all a carefully stitched illusion, one she needed to survive. Behind the scenes, Sania was drowning in a silence too heavy to carry. Every smile was rehearsed. Every post was timed. Every beat of music she moved to was a distraction from the pain she couldn't say out loud. She was a survivor of a marriage that stripped her of dignity, a community that demanded obedience, and a love that turned into control. Her home had become a prison, and her memories, weapons. Late at night, when the camera was off and the world had scrolled past her, Sania would sit alone. Her eyes, once bright for her audience, now dimmed by anxiety. Her voice, so bold online, trembled when faced with real-world judgment. She used TikTok as a lifeline, each video a whisper to the world. Look closer. I'm not okay. But no one did. They praised her beauty. They admired her strength. They called her brave. Yet no one asked what she was surviving. Sania wasn't just performing for a digital audience. She was documenting her descent. Piece by piece, her story unfolded through her content. But in a society trained to look away from discomfort, no one paused long enough to hear the silent scream behind her viral smile. And so she kept posting, kept smiling, kept pretending, until the story she had been hinting at caught up with her in the most brutal way imaginable. It began like so many love stories in the South Asian diaspora, arranged with tradition, sealed with family blessings, and built on the fragile hope that love would grow over time. Sania Khan entered her marriage with quiet expectations. She dreamed of partnership, of compassion, of building a life rooted in understanding. But what she walked into was not a union. It was a cage, gilded, polished, and suffocating. In the beginning, the signs were subtle. A disapproving glance if she spoke too freely. A cold silence if she expressed a different opinion. Her career ambitions were questioned. Her independence was treated like rebellion. Her voice, once loud and vibrant, began to lower in tone. She learned to walk carefully, to speak gently, to apologize without knowing why. The man she had married didn't want a partner. He wanted control. Family expectations made it worse. Cultural pressure whispered constantly in her ear. Be patient, adjust, don't shame us. Divorce was a dirty word. Complaints were betrayal. And so, Sania kept quiet. She smiled at family dinners, posed for pictures, and assured everyone she was happy. But behind closed doors, her spirit withered. Her laughter faded. The woman who once danced through life now moved like a ghost in her own home. There were no bruises, no police reports, no visible wounds, just a deep, aching silence that echoed louder than any scream. Sania was trapped in a marriage where her needs didn't matter. Her dreams weren't welcome, and her identity was erased day by day. And still, the world saw a married woman with a stable life. No one saw the prison walls closing in around her. Sania wasn't just battling one man, she was fighting a system that taught her to endure, not escape. A culture that glorified sacrifice over safety. a community that believed appearances mattered more than truth. She had entered the marriage hoping to build a future. Instead, she found herself mourning the death of the woman she used to be. It was her birthday, a day meant to be filled with warmth, laughter, and love. Sania had always loved birthdays, the little celebrations, the thoughtful messages, the reminder that she mattered. But this one felt different. The house was quiet, cold, the air tense, like a storm waiting to break. Her husband barely looked at her that morning. No card, no hug, just silence. She brushed it off, tried to stay positive. Maybe he had a surprise planned. Maybe he just needed time. But as the day went on, the coldness turned into sharpness, passive remarks, bitter tone, accusations masked as concern. He criticized her friends, mocked her interests, dismissed her plans. Every word was a blade, carefully aimed to cut, not the body, but the soul. By evening, Sania realized, this wasn't neglect, it was punishment. Her happiness bothered him. Her independence threatened him. Her light made his darkness more visible. And so, he dimmed her. There were no gifts, no celebration, no acknowledgement, just calculated silence and quiet cruelty. When she asked if something was wrong, he called her dramatic. When she tried to share how hurt she felt, he accused her of playing victim. And when she finally broke down in tears, he simply walked away. It wasn't the first time. He had learned how to hurt her in ways that left no evidence. No bruises, no scars, just confusion, self-doubt, emotional wounds so deep they couldn't be bandaged. He disguised his control as care, his manipulation as love. He would say he was just worried about her, just trying to protect her, just being a good husband. But every word, every silence, was designed to break her from within. Sania began to question herself. Maybe she was too sensitive. Maybe she expected too much. Maybe she deserved the silence. But deep inside, she knew. This wasn't love. This was control dressed as affection. A slow, deliberate poisoning of her spirit. And the saddest part? It happened on the day she was supposed to feel most loved. On her birthday, Sania didn't just turn a year older. She took one step closer to realizing she was no longer safe in her own home. When Sania first walked through the doors of her in-laws' home, she carried the weight of every daughter taught to uphold family honor. She was told to be respectful, obedient, quiet when necessary. In South Asian culture, the daughter-in-law is expected to adapt, to bend, to mold, to disappear if needed, all in the name of respect. At first, she tried. She smiled through discomfort. She ignored passive jabs. She stayed silent when boundaries were crossed. Her every move was watched, every word measured. Her clothes were questioned, her opinions dismissed. If she spent too much time on her phone, it was disrespect. If she spoke of her career, it was pride. If she defended herself, she was labeled arrogant. She reached out to her parents, hesitantly, hoping for understanding. But even they, trapped in the same cycle, told her to adjust. "It's a part of marriage," they said. "Don't bring shame to the family." And so, she swallowed her pain. Day after day, she played the role of the perfect wife, the ideal daughter-in-law. But inside, she was fading. The pressure wasn't just emotional, it was cultural. In this world, a woman's pain was a small price to pay for maintaining family image. If she spoke out, she was accused of breaking the home. If she stayed silent, she was praised for her strength. She learned quickly, suffering in silence was considered virtue. Speaking the truth was rebellion. Every time she thought of leaving, the whispers began. "What will people say? What will happen to our name? Divorce is failure. Women endure. Good daughters stay." And so, Sania stayed, not for love, but for survival. Not because she was weak, but because generations before her had been trained to wear silence like armor. But armor cracks under pressure. And with every passing day, Sania's spirit weakened. She stood on the threshold of a house that called itself her home. But it was never hers. It belonged to the honor she was expected to protect, even if it destroyed her. It wasn't just her home that felt like a prison. It was her mind. Sania Khan began to lose track of who she really was. The woman in her TikToks, bold and graceful, was drifting further from the woman who sat awake at night, questioning every decision, every emotion. Her husband's voice had taken root in her head. Every criticism, every insult, every dismissal echoed in her thoughts. "You're too dramatic. You're ungrateful. No one will believe you." Slowly, she began to believe it. She doubted her instincts. She questioned her worth. Even the smallest choices, what to wear, what to say, who to trust, became battles inside her own mind. This was psychological warfare. But the world only saw the surface. And when she finally began to speak, on TikTok, in captions, in hints, some followers listened. Others turned cruel. Comments poured in. Some praised her honesty. Others called her an attention seeker. "You're exaggerating. You made your bed, now lie in it. Stop playing the victim." The same culture that expected her silence now rejected her voice. She wasn't just surviving abuse. She was defending herself from a public that doubted her pain. Her mental health deteriorated quietly. She smiled on camera, but the light in her eyes was dimming. The laughter was thinner, the pauses between posts longer. Behind the phone screen was a woman unraveling under the weight of being strong for too long. Sania started therapy, looking for pieces of herself in the wreckage. But healing isn't easy when the wounds are still being opened daily, at home, online, in the mirror. And though she shared her truth piece by piece, hoping someone would hear the warning behind the words, the cruelest part was this. She was telling the world she was breaking. And still, no one came. When Sania finally said the word, divorce, it wasn't a cry for attention. It was a declaration of survival. For months, she had lived in the shadows of fear, guilt, and emotional destruction. But something inside her had begun to shift. She realized that love should never feel like control, and marriage should never mean surrendering your soul. Filing for divorce was her first act of reclaiming that soul. A bold step in a culture where women are taught to stay no matter the cost. It wasn't just leaving a man. It was challenging an entire system that punishes women for choosing themselves. But what the world sees as freedom, an abuser sees as threat. From the moment she filed, everything escalated. The silence from her ex turned into messages. The distance turned into unexpected appearances. What had once been cold control turned into unpredictable obsession. He wasn't letting go. He was waiting, watching, simmering with the anger of a man who felt entitled to ownership. Her decision to leave became his reason to hate. The community didn't help. Rumors spread. Whispers followed her. She must have done something. It's her fault the marriage failed. Even those who once praised her strength now questioned her character. But Sania stayed firm. She moved back to Chicago. She tried to rebuild. She turned to social media not just to heal, but to warn others, to break the silence for women still trapped. Her videos changed. They weren't just performances, they were battle cries. Every time she spoke her truth, she chipped away at the shame that held so many others hostage. But with every word, she also stirred a storm she couldn't fully see. She underestimated the rage of a man who couldn't stand losing control. In choosing freedom, Sania knew she was taking a risk. She just didn't know how close the danger already was. The world kept watching her. Video after video, Sania Khan appeared with her usual grace. Hair styled, words chosen, filters softening the frame. She spoke about self-worth, about breaking cycles, about healing. Her voice was calm, but beneath it was a quiet tremor. Her smile lingered just a second too long. Her pauses were heavy, like someone holding back tears behind the lens. Her followers praised her bravery, her authenticity, but few realized just how much pain she was hiding between the lines. In one clip, she talked about how hard it is to start over. In another, she said healing doesn't always look like peace. It sometimes looks like surviving hour by hour. Each video was more than content. It was a digital cry for help, wrapped in calm delivery and careful language. The camera became her confessional booth, the place where she could say the things that no one in her real life wanted to hear, where she could admit the loneliness, the fear, the disillusionment with a world that punished women for leaving abuse, then blamed them when it consumed them. Behind every polished reel was an exhausted soul. Behind every scripted sentence was a woman who didn't know how much longer she could keep holding everything together. But no one paused long enough to ask, is she really okay? Sania had mastered the art of appearing strong, and in a society obsessed with strength, no one noticed the slow collapse happening behind the screen. Her most viral moments were not her happiest. They were her most honest, and they were overlooked. She documented her own unraveling, but the world only saw views, likes, and perfect lighting, not the silent scream buried inside each frame. When Sania returned to Chicago, it felt like coming up for air after nearly drowning. The city she once called home now held a new meaning. It was freedom. It was safety. It was the chance to start over. She moved into her own space, began reconnecting with friends, and resumed therapy. For the first time in months, she could breathe without walking on eggshells. No more whispered threats, no more forced smiles, no more pretending. But trauma doesn't disappear with distance. Though her body was in a new place, her spirit was still trapped in the shadows of her past. She flinched at sudden noises. She checked the locks twice before bed. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart raced. Freedom felt fragile, temporary, like something that could be taken back at any moment. She tried to stay hopeful. She posted photos of sunsets. She wrote about healing. She spoke about life after leaving. But beneath it all was fear. Raw, lingering fear that the past hadn't let go of her yet. Because it hadn't. Her ex was still watching, still calling, still sending messages that danced between guilt and rage. Some days he begged for another chance. Other days he accused her of ruining his life. Sania reported him. She took precautions. But the law moves slowly when a woman says she's afraid, and even slower when that fear doesn't come with bruises. She looked over her shoulder walking home. She avoided familiar places. She changed her routines. She told herself she was safe. But deep down, she knew. He wasn't done. And no matter how far she ran, as long as he was free, she would never truly be. He said he loved her. He used the word like a shield, a justification, a weapon. But what kind of love needs control to survive? What kind of love turns violent when rejected? Her ex-husband didn't see Sania as a partner. He saw her as property, something owed, something owned. And when she broke free, he didn't grieve a lost relationship. He burned with the fury of a man who believed he had been robbed. To the world, he was calm, polite, soft-spoken. He wore the mask of a wronged husband, wounded by divorce, abandoned by his wife. But beneath that mask was a mind unraveling, one that confused possession with affection, power with intimacy. He stalked her online, obsessed over her posts, twisted her words into betrayal. Every time she spoke publicly about abuse, he heard an attack. Every video was an insult. Every step she took forward was, in his mind, a strike against his manhood. This wasn't heartbreak. It was entitlement. He believed Sania had humiliated him. Not by lying, but by telling the truth. And in his world, that was unforgivable. Psychologists would later describe his behavior as classic coercive control. Jealousy disguised as care, manipulation disguised as concern. He wasn't interested in love, he was interested in erasing her autonomy. When Sania left, he didn't lose a wife. He lost control, and for a man like him, that wasn't just painful. It was unbearable. And he began to plan, not how to win her back, but how to silence her forever. Her final video didn't go viral. It didn't have music or filters or trending hashtags. It was quiet, raw, almost too still. Sania sat in front of the camera, her voice soft, her eyes distant. She spoke about trauma, about starting over, about the fear that lingers even after you've left. She didn't name him. She didn't cry. But every word was heavy, like someone leaving breadcrumbs for a world too distracted to follow. She said healing is hard when your past keeps knocking at your door. She said survivors don't always feel safe, even in new homes. She said sometimes people don't leave because they know what their abuser is capable of. It wasn't a performance. It was a warning. She paused halfway through as if she wanted to say more, as if she wasn't sure she'd be heard. Her hands trembled slightly. She forced a smile at the end, the way she always did. But something was different. This wasn't just another post in her healing journey. This was her goodbye. The video was posted. A few close followers left kind words, but most scrolled past it, like any other clip. The algorithm didn't boost it. The world didn't stop. No one called. No one asked if she was okay. And within days, Sania Khan was gone, murdered in her own apartment by the man she once called husband. Her final message was not just a reflection of fear. It was a scream for help the world didn't hear until it was too late. The facts were there, the red flags, the messages, the history. Sania had voiced her fears. She had reported his behavior. Friends knew, therapists knew. Even strangers online sensed something was wrong. But when it mattered most, the system failed.
She wasn't just up against an abusive man. She was up against a structure that demanded proof before protection. A system that waits for bruises, for broken bones, for tragedy, before it takes threats seriously. She filed concerns, she followed the steps, but her fear wasn't visible enough, loud enough, urgent enough for a world that always doubts women until they're no longer alive to be doubted. Law enforcement didn't see urgency. They saw a domestic matter, a personal dispute, something that would blow over. After all, there were no restraining orders, no direct threats they could act on. Just unease, just fear, just a woman trying to survive. But Sania's case was never just personal. It was political, cultural, institutional. It exposed how deeply society discounts women's voices, especially women of color, especially those trying to leave. And the silence of her community made it worse. The whispers, the judgment, the warnings to stay quiet, to avoid shame. Even after she died, some said she should have been more private, as if her death was the cost of speaking out, as if silence would have saved her. But silence is what kills. Sania didn't die because she left. She died because no one listened when she said she was in danger. Not the police, not the system, not even the culture she tried so hard to break free from. In South Asian communities, silence isn't just common, it's sacred. Women are raised to lower their voices, to swallow discomfort, to protect the family name at all costs. From an early age, they are taught that honor isn't just their own, it's the family's, the community's, the entire culture's. And so, when Sania spoke out, she wasn't just breaking a silence, she was defying a legacy. Her decision to leave, to divorce, to speak openly about abuse wasn't seen as bravery. It was seen as betrayal. not just to her husband, but to tradition itself. People whispered behind closed doors. Some labeled her difficult. Others called her damaged. And many said what they always do. She should have stayed quiet. But Sania refused. She used her voice. She shared her pain. And in doing so, she held up a mirror to a community that prides itself on values, but too often values silence over safety. This wasn't just about one woman's tragedy. It was about generations of women taught to endure. It was about the aunt who never left her violent husband, the cousin who cries alone at night, the friend who disappears after marriage. It was about the collective cost of protecting Izzat while sacrificing lives. Sania's murder didn't just expose one man's rage. It revealed a system of silence, of complicity, of cultural gaslighting, where shame is weaponized, where truth is denied, where victims are blamed for their own suffering. And still, after everything, some said she brought it on herself, that she went too far, that she made it public. But the truth is, she didn't die because she broke the silence. She died because silence had been killing her long before the world even noticed. After her death, the silence shattered. Sania Khan's name flooded timelines. Her face, once a flicker in scrolling feeds, was now everywhere. Photos, reposts, hashtags. Influencers shared her videos. Survivors wrote tributes, and strangers who had never heard her voice now cried over it. The grief was real. The rage was louder. Justice for Sania trended across platforms. Posts demanded accountability. From the system, from the culture, from the silence that let this happen. People asked how it could be allowed. How a woman who warned the world was still left unprotected. How a man with a history of control was allowed so close, so easily, again. But beneath the outcry was something deeper. Guilt. Guilt from the followers who praised her strength, but missed the signs. Guilt from a community that failed to stand by her while she lived. Guilt from a world more comfortable mourning dead women than protecting living ones. Her Instagram became a memorial, each comment a confession, each share an echo of regret. But can justice live in hashtags? Sania didn't need viral posts. She needed intervention. She needed belief. She needed a society willing to act when she was still breathing. Now, her story was being used to educate, to mobilize, to spark conversations. And yes, some real change began. But it was too late for her.
The screen that once held her light now carried her memory, and the question lingered in every post. Why do we only listen when it's already over? Sania Khan is gone, but her voice refuses to die. Her story has become more than a tragedy. It's a reckoning. A question posed to every society that teaches women to be silent, every culture that hides its violence behind tradition, every system that fails to protect until it's too late. In her death, a conversation was forced into the open about how honor is used to justify control, about how domestic abuse doesn't always look like bruises, about how immigrant women caught between Western laws and Eastern expectations are often the most isolated and the most unheard. Her case sparked panels, petitions, articles, and discussions that had long been buried. Women across the diaspora began sharing their own stories, some for the first time. They spoke about arranged marriages, forced silence, emotional torment, and they did so in Sania's name. But with every step forward came resistance. There were still voices telling women not to speak out, not to bring shame, not to air dirty laundry. Still families more concerned with image than safety. Still victims afraid to leave because they saw what happened when Sania tried. So the question remains, will her scream echo into real change? Or will it fade like so many others, drowned in headlines, hashtags, and memorial posts? Her death has already become a symbol, but symbols alone don't save lives. Only action does. And if Sania's story has taught us anything, it's this. We can no longer afford to be silent, not when silence is what killed her. Sania is gone, but her voice still echoes, through every girl silently enduring abuse, every mother praying for her daughter's safety, and every community where lives are stolen in the name of honor. The question is, how much longer will we stay silent? If this story moved you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and continue this journey with Crime Chronicles Confidential, where real crime stories demand to be heard.